This is Randall Root, and this video is about ADO.NET, specifically about working with stored procedures in ADO.NET. I've created a demonstration we'll take a look at in this video, so I'll go ahead and open it up. In this demonstration, we'll be using a stored procedure I'm going to create in the temporary database on my local SQL server. This stored procedure highlights three ways you get data out of a stored procedure. The first way is by sending out a query result. This query result is represented by this select statement, an output parameter represented by this code, and a return code or return status. I'll take this code and copy it into my SQL server. Make sure that I'm in the temp DB and create the stored procedure. The select statement just returns the current server date and time. The output just returns a string with the input parameter concatenated on. And the return code is just a positive 100. Doesn't really have any significance here, just to show you that you can return integer data from that. In the ADO.NET code, to start off with, at the beginning I've added in system.data.SQL client. So, down here where I'm making a SQL connection object, I have system.data.SQL client.SQL connection, and I'm making a brand new connection object. The connection string includes these commands. I want to use Windows authentication, integrate security. I want my data source to be my local SQL server. And I want the initial database I want to point to, called initial catalog here, to be the temporary database, tempdb. After that, I define a SQL command object. I go ahead and say that I'm going to use the connection I just defined. I go through and I say I want it to be a stored procedure as the command type. I go through and say that the name of the stored procedure is testproc. That was indeed the name of the stored procedure that we just placed inside the database. Then identify my input parameters and output parameters and return code parameter. First parameter is my input parameter. I called it parameter 1. So I make a parameter object. I define that it's a input parameter. I define its data type. I want to make the size match the size of the stored procedures parameters. I set the name to match the name of the stored procedure parameter. I'll do the same thing for the output. And then add it to the parameters collection. After I fill up the values from the text box. An output parameter doesn't actually end up filling a value from the user interface. It receives a value. So what I end up doing is I make a parameter object, indicate it's an output, define its data type, define its size as necessary, tell the name of the output parameter in the SQL Server stored procedure code, but I don't give it an actual value. It's meant to hold a value coming back out. So I just add it to the parameters collection. Finally, I make a new parameter. I would indicate that it's a return value. The return values in SQL Server are always integer 32, so I define the type as integer 32. The parameter name is actually undefined in SQL Server, so you just make up one. I usually use RC for return code, and I add that to the parameters collection. We open the connection to the database, and we execute the stored procedure. Because the stored procedure has result data via the select statement, and I know that the result data coming back is datetime, I cast the execute scalar into a datetime and put the results into a datetime variable. I'll close my connection when I'm done. I want to execute the stored procedure, get the data, and close down my connection immediately. Although the connection is closed, I've still captured the datetime from the query, and I display that in the message box. I still have in the parameters collection my output value coming in from the output parameter, and I display that in a message box. And I have the return status, which was that integer value of plus 100, and I'll return that. I'll display that in a message box. When all said and done, when I run this, I should be able to put in some values, and it will return the current date time on the SQL server, the string plus a concatenated value coming from the text box above, and the return code data, which is positive 100. In this demonstration, we took a look at how to use stored procedures along with ADO.NET. The key things are that stored procedures can return query data, output data, and return code data, return status data. To capture them, you make ADO.NET parameters with the direction defined as input, output, and return value. To capture query data, you either execute reader or execute scalar, and then process the results, just like you would any normal SQL Server query. Hope you found this useful.